Good afternoon and welcome to the District of Sechelt Committee of the Whole. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are conducting business on the Sechelt Nation land. And first item of the agenda, call to order and declaration of conflict. Is there any conflict among the group? Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. Good, motion? Okay, second, all in favor? Thank you. And we don't have any appointment delegations today, so we can move from that. New business. I don't believe we have any new business at this point that I'm aware of. Nope. Okay. And number 5, I count while I'm on the agenda just to keep myself in order. All right. The first up, we have Dusty Road Septic Receiving Plan. And we have a council presentation from Director Dillon. Thank you.
Hello, Council. So today I'm presenting a detailed and thorough presentation on the septic receiving facility long-term plan. This is something that the previous council requested that we do. And the idea today is just to provide a fulsome picture of what's happening there, what the facility is all about, so that council has all the information they need to make informed decisions as we move down through this process. We have hired a consultant to help us with this long-term plan. So this is just a slide on our consultant, Sperling Hansen. Nicole will be representing them today and speaking later. She'll be presenting some of the information. Sperling Hansen's well-established in landfill and solid waste management, and they've done a few of these septic receiving facilities at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District and Prince Rupert and other places. They have about 27 professional staff working for them. So just wanted to start off first with a background and historical context about the existing facility. And for a lot of you, you've seen the facility, so this is more for the general public's knowledge. And so in 1993, the Sunshine Coast Regional District transferred ownership and responsibility of all the existing liquid waste management infrastructure to Sechelt. And that included 2 wastewater treatment plants. One of them is no longer there anymore. Well, it's there, but it's not functioning as the ebb tide treatment facility. And the other one was known as the Upper Dusty Road Treatment Facility, which was constructed around 93, 94, and then again seed upgrades around 98, 99. And then when the Sechelt Water Resource Center was commissioned, the Upper Dusty Road facility was converted to receive septage only. And so this is just, this slide is just to show that there's differences between the material that is being received up at Dusty Road and what is at the Water Resource Center. So on the left, you'll see these are the WRC biosolids. So that's what remains behind after the process is there. And then the material that's up at Dusty Road, which is the septic solids, which come from a variety of sources: septic tanks, public toilets, grease traps. And they look about the same, but the material on the right has lower nutrient contents, and it's a little bit more inconsistent. This area, this is the area showing that what's covered right now by our wastewater collection system. So if you reside outside the area in red, you're likely using some form of on-site sewage disposal. And so areas in Davis Bay, for example, would be using the Dusty Road facility when they need to pump out their tanks and dispose of that septage. So the site, the septic receivings come up before, so this was a early conceptual plan for a facility. Just, you know, and this ultimately, this is now the site of the operations center, but this showed what one could potentially look like and the footprint of the area at the time. So this is an early rendering. And so the current situation is that, again, to refresh the public, that's where the Dusty Road is located. It's up Dusty Road, just past the Lehigh gravel quarry before you hit the landfill. And this is the layout. This is actually from the engineering drawings for the facility, but this kind of shows the process that happens there. So septic trucks will come to the septic receiving station. That material goes into the aerated sludge basin, which then gets discharged into the sludge storage lagoon, goes towards what's called an oxidation ditch. That goes to the clarifier through what was the old chlorine contact tank, and then discharges to the WRC. So a lot of that infrastructure was associated with the old wastewater plant. So it's actually not needed in a classical septic receiving facility. It's just there and it's being utilized, and that's the way things are plumbed as they are. And then you'll see another area at the bottom where all the dewatered septic sludge is stockpiled. They're in geotubes, which the idea of which is once you put them in there, that dewaters the septic, and over time it hardens so you can transport it off site. And this is a photo of some of the detailed photos of some of those components I showed you in the previous slide. And you can see some of this infrastructure is getting on to 30 years old. And so actually the clarifier is probably the most recent addition to that facility, but this gives you an idea of what it looks like. And so currently we're collecting waste from a variety of sources. That includes local government, First Nations, the town of Gibsons, the SCRD. All that material comes to the Upper Dusty Road facility, as well as from BC Ferries, portable toilets. So there's a lot of different inputs that go into that facility. And so this is a slide with a lot of text, but this just, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but this just shows the operational challenges with the current facility, because it was converted from an old wastewater treatment plant, and because some of the infrastructure there is getting older. And if in the question period, if you would like to drill deeper on some of these challenges, I have the manager of wastewater online to answer any of those operational questions. Now, this is a pretty sobering slide here. So this shows the financial picture if things were to remain as they are. So you can see that the yellow line is the cumulative net, and why this starts at 2019 is because that is when we started tracking the cost for septic separately from the rest of the wastewater system. And you can see, we have some big upcoming expenditures, mostly related to the fact that we're taking out the solids and then we're dewatering them and then we're shipping them off site. Those are expenses that approach $500,000 and have to be done frequently. And then the other part of this is the revenue projections have come down because the septic haulers are dewatering their loads before they come to Dusty Road. So they're not coming as frequently as they used to. And sorry, I just wanted to point out a few things. There's some things in here that are still not captured. So we're not factoring in money for a new facility. That's not being put aside. There's no funds being set aside to decommission that existing facility. And the land acquisition, we're putting aside $100,000 every year, but by the time the lease expires, which 2031, we would have $800,000, which is not nearly enough to build a new facility like this. And here's this just describing that land tenure. So, we had a lease, it started in 2001 and it expires in 2031. I did reach out to the province in October of 2022, and they responded saying, if to do an extension of that would be viewed as a premature lease extension, and it would be prioritized low, and you could expect something like that to take up to 5 years to for them to even make a decision on. So, we'd probably would want to apply no later than 2026 if we were going to go down that road. And the other thing is, since then I have reached out again to the province to see if that could be expedited, something could be changed, and they have not responded to my email to date. And so with that, it's a brief introduction, and I'll hand it over to Nicole with Sperling Hansen to present some information about septic management fundamentals and some of the work we've done to date.
Oops, sorry. There we go. Can you see my slides okay?
We can see you, but we can't see the slides.
Okay, let me try sharing again here. This looks like it might be working. No. Sorry about that.
We now see the slides. Thanks.
Oh, you do? Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon again. Thank you, Kern. I will be going through the septic management fundamentals and a little bit more detail on the long-term plan moving forward and currently what we have accomplished. Oh, sorry. Don't seem to be able to switch my slides. Oh, let me try this method. Oh, there we go. I picked it up. Okay, so just going to go through briefly these components of a typical septic receiving facility, from unloading to processing and solids component and liquid component. The gas component I won't go into because there's typically very little gas to use at a septic receiving facility. So the first component is the emptying of the trucks. They will pull into a facility and through a cam lock discharge the material into a building, or outside they will discharge into a system that will then direct it to the treatment. These are usually metered for data collection and billing. The users are often registered and have a user code. Of course, there's the odor control for folks that surround the property. Often there will be truck washing faucet and hose available. Hours are set normally, and staffing depends on the type of facility. The on-site process and treatment options are pre-treatment or treatment. Pre-treatment normally involves screening the grit screening and grit removal, solid separation, liquid to a municipal wastewater treatment facility, and then solids to disposal or beneficial use. Whereas treatment at a facility would include the same screening and grit removal, solid separation, and the liquid to a mechanical or passive on-site treatment. The solids would also then go to disposal and beneficial use. With respect to the screening, grit removal, typically the mechanism is this equipment pictured, Honey Monster. It removes the objects such as rags and plastics and metals so as to prevent damage of the equipment, any clogging of the piping, etc. The solids and liquid separation, either passive or mechanical. As far as passive goes, as you saw at your facility currently, geotubes are used, or a drying bed as pictured above, or a decanting cell. Otherwise, mechanically, centrifuge is used, that's pictured here, screw or rotary press, or vacuum-assisted drying beds. With respect to the solids, solids can go direct to land, used for agriculture, forestry, as per regulation, the Organic Matter Recycling Regulation. They can go to landfill for disposal, direct disposal, as per the Environmental Management Act or the operation certificate for the specific landfill. Also can go to composting. It's normally combined with other organics, and product is used for either landfill cover, topsoil fabrication, or it can be marketed on a quality and quantity basis. With respect to the liquid treatment, typically facultative lagoons with no aeration, aerated lagoons, and constructed wetlands are used, as are pictured here. Aeration lagoon is this one in the middle here. So with respect to dewatering, there are pros and cons with respect to the mechanical dewatering and lagoon or engineered cells. Mechanical dewatering normally can be done on a smaller footprint. The current facility has about a 4.3 hectare footprint. It involves a higher level of maintenance and arrangements for solids management. It is more complex. Operators are needing to be more skilled. As with respect to lagoons, it requires a larger footprint, and it is often less complex with less maintenance and risk to service disruption. Odor management is a vital component, as you can imagine. It is suggested that anaerobic processes are avoided, that any mechanical dewatering is carried out in an enclosed area, and ventilation is used consistently, and filter or treat the air, exhaust air, through biofilter, as is pictured here, ultraviolet light, activated carbon, and an bioxide can be applied to the odor. So I'll just talk to you about the plan and how far we're getting as far as the plan goes. And first, the objectives are to present the options for a new septic receiving facility, provide viable options for septic solids, including the appropriate treatment, provide a sustainable financial plan, including suitable cost recovery model, provide the district with a plan to decommission the existing Dusty Road facility. The important considerations that we need to all think about for this project is who will operate the facility. Is that the district, another government, a joint local government operation, or a completely different entity? And who does the facility serve? Does it serve just the district of Sechelt residents and or businesses, the district and Sechelt residents and businesses, or the entire lower Sunshine Coast? Also, which technology for liquid and solids components, on-site and off-site treatment options, what land is needed, and then of course the comparative operating and maintenance costs and capital costs, and what staffing is going to be needed for the different types of processes that will be used. Where will the new facility be located? On the current site, another district parcel of land, purchase a new parcel of land or outside the district boundaries in the regional district or on Crown land. And finally, how will the new facility be funded? So the scope of the project is 8 phases. We've completed 4, the first 4. The next phases will be stakeholder engagement, and then we'll go into the conceptual plan for a new facility based on feedback and other decisions that are made. And then phase 7 will be the financial plan development, and finally a decommissioning plan for the current facility. These items were well laid out by the staff in the request for proposals, and we're following very closely with those terms. So the work to date, as shown before, we've reviewed a lot of reports and data. I've conducted an environmental assessment of the current site. There has been some early key stakeholder engagement consultation. We've completed the technical memorandum 1, TM2 and TM3, and I'll go into those in more detail. Okay, get into my little arrow here. So with TM1, it was submitted in May. We went through, as I mentioned, reports and maps and photos, discharge authorizations, volumes, lots of data, and financial information. We did see a few gaps and listed those in that technical memorandum, but a lot of that information has now been provided. As far as Tech Memo 2 goes, it was submitted in July. It was a demand forecast model, and the major component of that was to confirm the parameters we were going to use for that forecast, including population, historical flows, historical types of waste. So we came up with a theoretical model based on forecasts, so population, usage, average and peak flows, and sludge volumes. A part of this TM was also a statement of requirements for a facility, including the available skilled labor, regulations and standards, legislation, best practices, and a number of key considerations, including odor, neighbor impacts, etc. And then the market demand and spatial considerations. So these tech memos I should have mentioned before are all available and in a lot more detail than I'm presenting here. So the theoretical model, we start out with a number of equivalent dwellings to determine the flows at 11,443 on the system, or needing to use the system. And also confirmed that the dwellings would need to pump their tanks every 5 years based on a 3.4 cubic meter tank volume. The volume by 2071 then was looking like almost 20,000 cubic meters per year. Technical memo number 3, submitted in October, was all focused on locations and finding and assessing locations for a facility. So the contents of that tech memo are initial key considerations and criteria. We listed a number of criteria to find a perfect location, and can discuss that with the staff. We found a number of potential sites based on some spatial constraint mapping, and then developed a numerical decision matrix, also reviewed and approved by staff to evaluate all the candidate sites. So the long list of key considerations included in this part of the project, and I won't read them all, but some of the typical ones were suitable technologies, buffer zone, public perception, climate conditions, climate change, geography, etc. So it's quite an extensive list of considerations. So to find the locations, we used a GIS process, constraint mapping, that helped us with the finding all the zoning, setbacks, whether or not the properties were Crown. We also did a visual inspection. So the resources that we used were very good, the provincial IMAP BC, and then local mapping as well. Some of the measurements we included were road access, haul distances to the Seashell Center, distance to sewer main, distance to three-phase power, and the like. We also were asked to look at Lot L, and this was basically just a review of the pros and cons of using Lot L and how it fit into our criteria. So the pros for this specific location is that it is in the district and owned by the district. It is fronting a sewer main. It has hydro and water service and has good road access. The cons included proximity to residents, commercial, and sensitive areas, and a creek gully. Noise and odor may be an issue for adjacent facility workers, and size may not be suitable. It's 1.3 hectares. We used a 4.3 hectare size for as compared to the current facility. So this is the matrix that we put all of the sites through, or the shortlisted sites, as well as the current site in Lot L. And the criteria were developed, or categorized as environmental, land tenure, regulatory, physical suitability, logistics, infrastructure upgrade requirements, and compatibility with surrounding land use. And each of those items were basically ranked and then scored based on a low, medium, high. So 3 points for low, 2 for medium, 1 for high. So the higher the score at the end, the more the site was compatible with the criteria. So the assessment on that, using the matrix, we initially found 11 sites, and including the existing lot and Lot L. We did shortlist to 5 to make it a little bit more useful and easy to come up with a good list of sites that were suitable with the criteria. The candidate sites had several criteria in common. There were 5. They had a footprint that was similar and suitable buffers. They were all Crown land, and we do assume that there would be stakeholder interest with respect to maybe recreation. They are within the 2015 Seashell Statement of Intent area and Statement of Intent traditional territory boundary of the Squamish Nation. The potential concerns are with hauling distance to the Seashell Center, proximity to sewer connection, primary or secondary roads, and three-phase power. They are greenfield, and there is conflict with OCP in regards to the current zoning is resource zoning, and the permitted use may need to be amended. So you'll see the candidate sites all throughout the area. The 5, as mentioned, were all Crown land. Again, the technical memo will show all the details with respect to each site and some photos. So I haven't gone into any of that here. So the stakeholder engagement, the initial phase of that was basically to help us with our theoretical demand forecast model to see if there's any sort of red flags with respect to how we were calculating or assuming volumes. So it included the development of a stakeholder registry. Initial contact was made with an email for those that did have email. Survey questions were sent to each of them, and they did not elicit a lot of response. There was definitely a follow-up phone call to see if, first of all, if the emails were received and by the right person. And then we also applied for, we made an application to the rights and title application to the Seashell Nation. One of the important issues that came up was that discussions with the regional district and the Sechelt were considered very critical at this juncture. So you will see this item come up in the future. Just a little bit of data on that initial stakeholder engagement. The results, we did speak to folks from the regional district, the Sechelt Planning Department, Town of Gibson's. BC Ferries was difficult as they have a very complex process to get to the right people, but also definitely the septic hauling companies. They did promise that they would get back to us, but we never did hear from them. Some private businesses and including restaurants with respect to grease disposal. So 18 out of 51 responses. I just wanted to point out how the project has been advertised or promoted. We have worked with your communications person to get it on Have Your Say. So that page of the district projects has the septic facility project listed with along with the timeline and then the main contact person. And that is my presentation at this point.
Thank you, Nicole. So we'll just wrap this up with next steps, a closing thought, and then we'd be happy to field any questions that council might have. So next steps. So it's really considering these fundamental questions that are going to, set the roadmap of how we move along with this. And so, again, who operates a new facility? Who does it serve? Which technologies are going to use, and where should be located? And I would say in there too, how will it be funded? And those, direction from council as we move forward on those questions is really going to form the basis of what we do going forward. We're going to have continued outreach with other local governments and stakeholders. Now, you could see from Nicole's presentation that the uptake has not been too great. So we're hoping this presentation today will raise the issue in the community, and we'll get some more engagement from the people we need to. And those are, to a big degree, folks at the SCRD, Sechelt, and other the septic haulers and people who are affected by this. The next technical memorandum for this project will be related to stakeholder engagement. So in the next 3 months, we'll be hitting hard on that, trying to get more feedback so we can present that to council for the next decision point. And so that next decision point is going to be after we have what we heard document or tech memo on the stakeholder engagement piece. And then by then we're hoping to get some direction to see what council's intention is on this. And just with a closing thought is the district of Sechelt is not the only one dealing with septage. It's an issue in other locations, and have a quick 2-minute video presentation about recent changes that have been made in the Fraser Valley with septage, and how there could be unanticipated consequences. So this is an important process, and that's why we want to give a fulsome presentation today. Hopefully the next ones in the future will be a little bit shorter than this one, but all the information is there. So this is a quick 2-minute video. We got volume. Okay.
In every direction, Chilliwack is growing. New construction has pushed the population past 100,000 here. The municipality making a decision to protect a wastewater treatment plant already near capacity. People living outside the city limits with septic tanks barred from using the facility.
Yeah, so it caught us off guard, and so we've been trying to talk to the people that we can, municipalities, the mayors and engineers and whomever else, to try and come up with some form of a temporary solution to get us by.
Chilliwack, the latest municipality to make this change. According to the city, it has seen a 40% plus increase in the amount of trucked liquid waste, causing operational disruptions, increased treatment costs, and effluent quality issues. Over the last number of years, Abbotsford, Mission, and Hope have all closed to private haulers. The industry is concerned any options for disposal outside the region just add time and cost.
You know, for some of the haulers out here, it's going to be an extra 3 hours worth of driving back and forth just to drop off a load. So obviously those costs are going to have to get passed off to the consumer.
The city of Chilliwack wouldn't respond to our questions on camera, saying ultimately this is an issue for the Fraser Valley Regional District. The FVRD did send us a statement acknowledging that it's an issue, but offering few solutions.
Writing, FVRD has contacted several facilities out of the region that are able to accept liquid waste from private haulers and has provided this information to these businesses. In addition, FVRD is connecting with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Environment to identify potential solutions for rural residents.
There's no quick answer to this. Either way, some upgrades to existing facilities or new facilities need to happen, and those don't happen overnight.
There are an estimated 3,000 homes in the district, plus Indigenous communities that are potentially affected by these changes. With no obvious place to dump, private septic operators are now reluctant to take on any new clients. Aaron MacArthur, Global News.
So thank you. I just wanted to leave that because the purpose of this planning initiative is to consider everything so that we're not in the same situation and we haven't heard all the inputs into this process. So this is an opportunity for us to get this right. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
First of all, thank you very much, Director Dillon. Excellent, comprehensive report. And to Nicole as well for offering her information. And we've got some critical decisions ahead of us. But initially, let's take some questions from council.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple questions. I'll throw them both out there and staff can respond as appropriate. So I'm wondering if we know, even anecdotally, the proportion of District of Sechelt usage versus Sechelt Nation, SCRD. I don't know if the town of Gibsons uses our facility. Mayor White seemed to indicate that their entire jurisdiction is actually on sewer. So it would be interesting to know if that's not true. And then is part of this process looking at actual uses, cost analysis for the dewatered biosolids? We know that they have to be removed from the lagoons every couple of years. We know that it's going to be expensive to dispose of them. Can we be putting them to better use than whatever we're going to be doing with them? And I'll leave it there for the moment. Thanks.
Excellent questions, Councillor Toth. Director Dillon, are you able to answer these questions for us?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'll probably stick handle them and direct them to the appropriate person. But so in this case, on the first question, what percentage are each local government contributing to this? I believe that was something that Sperling Hansen has looked into, and as well, our manager of wastewaters online, Christine, might have some anecdotal information on that. So I will defer first to Nicole and then to Christine if she wants, or the manager of wastewater if she wants to add anything.
Thank you, Karen. We have searched through the data, but as you can imagine, the percentages haven't been clear because the trucks have not necessarily reported their source. So we are certainly hoping to dig more into that type of information. And it can be forthcoming. But maybe Christine can shed some more light. She's more familiar with the current data.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Dillon. I just have some very general information that I can offer through a memo from March 2015, which generally says if we look at the population of the Sunshine Coast, not including Powell River, at the time there was a population of 28,000. And if we serve through the District of Sechelt WRC system, 6,000 to 6,500, and the town of Gibson's 4,500, that leaves 17,000 people and various community properties in the regional district also being served by the Dusty Road Septage Receiving Facility.
You have another question?
Yeah, I'll answer the second part of the question. So on that first thing, I think we're going to do more work as we go through this process to try and break that out if we can. The second question was about the solids and what we're doing with those. And so right now we've got them dewatered. The plan was to take them off site to a site that deals with them. There was some talk of this material potentially being used at the landfill. My understanding is because of the makeup of the material, that fell through. And again, I'll defer to the manager of wastewater because she was involved with these discussions on a detailed level to add some more context.
Thank you, Director Dillon. Sorry, you were just cutting out a little bit. The question was around the finances with removing the solids from the lagoon and also processing the current geotube solids at the site. Is that correct?
Yes.
And yes, I believe the budget and the presentation has taken that into consideration moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Toth, does that answer your questions? Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you to the chair. I guess we don't have the base data yet to say whether this is a facility that is just primarily servicing Sechelt or if it's more broadly the region. So much like the Fraser Valley, are we, is it a facility that Sechelt should be running? Or should we be talking to the region about jointly running it? Or should we be closing it down and diverting the waste to other facilities in the Sunshine Coast? Thanks.
Thank you. Through the chair, I see the Director of Finance has something to add on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. So general information, about half our, I'll say just a little bit greater than half our residents would be on the septage system over the sewer system. I have a few other little general tidbits. Town of Gibson's only 3 residences there are on a septage system. The rest are on their own sewer system. And the regional district, they do have a number of treatment plants. However, most of those treatment plants at times will also load into our system. So if they're doing a major clean in Gibson's in the tanks there, often we'll receive some of their septage just during the clean when they're cleaning the tanks out. Same within Wilson Creek. The reason I know is because we build them, all these people, right? And as well as regional district systems when they're doing a major clean or refurbishment of, whether it be FBRs or whatever, we will also take septage from there. Facilities. So it's a big mix between Sechelt and the regional district. Yep.
All right, just a follow-up to that then. So in order to do the right thing by the residents, 50% of the residents of Sea Shelter who are on septic, should we not be in finishing the study portraying the cost? This is what would happen if we close this facility down. Shipping costs are going to increase. This is the probable impact to you. Scenario B is obviously from the analysis that's done, this is the money that we have to put in to operate this facility for another 50 years and compare the two. It just strikes me that this is a facility that fits within a regional service, if you will, and not just for Sea Shelter. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll take the first stab at this one through chair. Director of Finance wants to add more, or any Nicole, Manager Wastewater. But I think that's one of the fundamental questions where we posed here as we go through this. This is a regional service, one that we inherited because SCRD sent all its, like they transferred all their infrastructure back in the 90s to the District of Sea Shelter. We maintained this ever since. There's no alternative facilities. I understand there's some very small private ones for dewatering, but they're dealing with such small quantities that they could never possibly address the volumes generated by the Lower Sunshine Coast. So they're, at the time, there's really, if we were to shut down tomorrow, there's no real viable facility on the coast. So that's why we need to really think, we need to bring in these other local governments into the conversation. If there's an argument there to be made that if this is a regional service, then perhaps they should be contributing to an extent to the upkeep of this as well.
Sorry, I'll keep one last follow-up question. I guess this question's directed to our regional rep. Then I know the SCRD, one of their two major issues they're going to be dealing with going forward is biosolids. Is this facility factored into the work that they're doing, or at all?
With regards to the 15 or so community sewer plants that the regional district runs, all, as far as I'm aware, and based on their escalating costs over the last couple of years, all of their pump out product goes to Dusty Road, but they pay for it, right?
Yeah.
We charge them, which is why their costs have risen so much in the last couple of years, is because we've increased the fees drastically there. So from the regional perspective, I think they are already contributing, and in that their user pay, right?
Councillor Shepherd, good for now? Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? Any other questions? Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit of the relationship between the septage facility and the water resource center or sewage facility. How are they linked, and how does that relate to how water is used? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question through the chair. Like, the simple explanation is that all the effluent that after the settling of the solids has occurred, all that effluent goes down a force main to the WRC for processing. So that's how the two are related.
Any further questions? And anyone else? Please, Mary Henderson.
Your microphone's on.
I think I've got, as council will know, I got a bit of history with this. So I think we've got two things that we've got to get our minds around. One is the receiving portion. There's slightly, I use different language perhaps from history, but we receive the truckloads, and then we have a decision point on whether we treat them or we just dewater them. So what's happening at Upper Dusty Road right now, I believe, is just dewatering them. And then the treatment happens at the Water Resource Center.
So I have some questions and concerns when I look at this map. Sorry. I have some concerns when I look at the map about these locations being all over the coast in terms of are we then anticipating what amounts to another treatment facility in these different, sometimes remote locations? So that's one very key strategic decision, because we're adding another level of complexity. If we can keep it where it ties into the existing water resource center, then the second part is already dealt with, because as we know, we have lots of capacity in the water resource center. The second thing is, we've got the expertise to treat all of these solids within Sechelt, thanks to the team, the wastewater management team. So while it may be a regional application, I agree with Councillor Toth that wherever it comes from, people are paying. So I believe that it's probably more sensible, because the expertise happens to be within the district, that we stay with this model, and that we also find a way to our location where we can continue to use the treatment center, the water resource center. So I'll leave it. Those are my comments for the moment.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I was wondering if any brownfield sites were considered. I mean, Greenfield is like new on undisturbed basically land. And so I wondered if there were any brownfield sites, which to me would be more suitable for some facility like this. And also I noticed locations seem to be around Porpoise Bay. Now, I'm not too sure about the health status long-term of Porpoise Bay, but I think that should be also a consideration as the impact on Porpoise Bay. So if you have any comments on that, thank you.
For answering in response to the question through the chair. So the locations are mainly a mapping exercise, taking into account many constraints. So those might be zoning, might be distance to riparian areas. There's a number of them listed. So we didn't look at specific brownfield sites to see if they would fit that criteria. I suppose any site could be taken like we did with Lot L and put through the lens of the constraint mapping. So the constraint mapping will have regulatory requirements, which we have to meet with this as well, right? So perhaps that's something we could look at in the scoring, is to give it a few extra points in the scoring system if it is on an existing brownfield site. But in terms of looking at specific brownfield sites, that's not how these sites would have emerged. They would have emerged as in terms of the constraint mapping exercise.
Councillor Toth.
In response to questions to the chair, so that again goes back to one of the fundamental questions we pose, is what technology you use. So those spatial constraint mapping was done assuming the existing footprint of Dusty Road is what's guiding it going forward, but that may not be the case. If we go to more mechanical methods, we could shrink that footprint and we suddenly open up more sites that we could look at based on the constraint mapping. So that's an important decision point that will affect, where the site goes and the size of the parcel we need. And Nicole, if you have some additional thoughts on this, because your team worked on the constraint mapping, definitely a consideration is the conceptual design and what technologies are used.
Yeah, thank you, Director Dillon. I didn't actually hear that question, unfortunately, but I can assume that it's regarding the the size of the site, or what was it regarding?
I can paraphrase the question. So it was, you know, the site of this, the site, in the mapping, there's a certain size used, but in the actual artist rendering is smaller. And so that was done based on the Dusty Road existing footprint. So what things with technology could be incorporated to make that site smaller and perhaps open up other sites.
Absolutely, they're very correct. That's concerned. Yeah, we would when it comes to the conceptual design, we'll know a little bit more after some decisions have been made. What the sizing will be, especially with respect to you know, the difference between having lagoons and what to do with the solids that are generated.
Any further questions, Council? Mayor Henderson?
Thank you. I think one thing to be aware of is the site of Upper Dusty Road, the part that's being used is much smaller than the 4.3 hectares. So I hope that the study hasn't just automatically assumed that 100% of Upper Dusty is needed. I grinned when I saw the drawing in the early part of the presentation, because I think that's from 2010. So it's I hope the technology is allowing us some improvements to that. I wanted to ask how all of this ties in with the liquid waste management plan and the status of that process.
Thank you through the chair. So this is one component. This would be one component of a liquid waste management plan. Liquid waste management plan would involve several studies. And so we've been, rather than, you know, going full in and doing every study simultaneously, we've been doing it with the funding we've received. So for example, the sanitary sewer modeling and master plan would also lead into a liquid waste management plan, as well as this. It would be one component of that. So, and that's something we're probably going to ramp up as we get the first report back on the sanitary sewer model and master plan. And we are planning to report back to council on the liquid waste management plan this year. One of the other components of that is the sewage commission.
This year?
Yeah.
Next year?
No, this year we'll have an update on where we're at.
Great, thank you. If I might, I'm wondering if any consideration has been given to using the current SCRD landfill as a location, a new location. Once that we're told is almost being filled out, and it could be, my understanding is it certainly would involve a bit of piping further up the hill, but it could be used because it can't be used for, can't mine it. It's about 40 or 50 meters of garbage and stuff on it. So you see Councillor Toth is going to answer my question.
Thank you. I'm not answering the question specifically, but I actually wanted to tag on to that, because one of the projects that is being considered going forward is the relocation of the contact water pond at the landfill, which could buy us several years of lifespan up there. But part of that process would actually require the SCRD to extend the sewer main up to the landfill. So whether that's locating on the property or whether that's locating immediately adjacent to the east or the west of the landfill, I think that speaks a little bit to the brownfield site contemplation, because it might be that maybe we can lease a small portion of land from Lehigh or from the nation through Lehigh immediately adjacent to the landfill for this facility going forward.
If I may, through the chair, we did not look specifically at the landfill, but the landfill and the SCRD have looked at Dusty Road. So early on, they did come to us and ask us if they could use Dusty Road to get rid of their contact pond water. And after an assessment with their wastewater team, we didn't think that effluent would be suitable for the Dusty Road facility. So hasn't been looked at from our point of view of going up there, but they have looked at us and we couldn't go forward with that option.
Any further questions, council?
Thank you, Chair. It sounds from what I've heard, like it's a given that we're going to be running this facility going forward. And I really want us to consider all of the options. So I'd like to take a stab at making a recommendation here, which would be that the discontinuing of septage receiving services be given consideration as part of stakeholder engagement and subsequent analysis. We might find that, you know, the cost for our residents would be too high, but I don't hear that that's something that would be forthcoming as part of the process that we've got the update on today.
Is that something that we need a motion on at this point? Okay, so can we, we'll make that into a motion. And can you please repeat the motion again, please?
That the discontinuing of septage receiving services be given consideration as part of stakeholder engagement and subsequent analysis.
Excellent. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Madam Shepherd, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And are we good? Any other questions? Good. Oh,
Yep, sorry. Thank you, Chair. Will we be seeing copies of the, I don't know if it's the report from Swirling or the technical memos? I'd like to see that as part of a future staff report, please.
that request received?
Thank you, Chair. We can provide copies of any tech memo upon request to any counselor who would like them. I can share that, share all three with all of council after this meeting.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? All right. Excellent job, council. Really good questions. So just to sort of, oh, wait, sorry, Anderson.
Sorry, thank you. Out of practice. We show in 2023 spending about 400 or almost $500,000, I think, on capital costs, if I read that chart correctly. What work did we do for that kind of money?
Thank you, Chair. So that was identified for potential offsite removal of the geotubes that are already sitting at the receiving facility, which the manager of wastewater can provide an update on where we're at with that, but that's what that was for.
But it hasn't been done.
It hasn't been done today.
Right.
No.
So it's in there as a
yeah
contingency, I suppose, at this stage, since we.
I would say with the
done in the last 2 weeks.
No. So with anything 2023 and forward in that financial pictures that would be based on projections, anything 2019 to 2022 is actual expenditures.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Hey, great job, council. And thank you. Director Dillon, did you have something you wanted to say? Okay, well, thank you so much for your presentation and the rest of the team. And this is certainly a critical issue for us to be, to keep on our radar and certainly keep moving forward. My question is, there are still a lot of moving parts, a lot to be done. What kind of time frame are we looking at? I know there's a lease, but what are we looking at time frame wise?
Thank you, Chair. So we're looking to come back next spring with the stakeholder engagement, and then we'll move along throughout the year with this. Initially we had an aggressive timeline. We get this done in a year, but after the lack of response we received from certain stakeholders and the fact that we have to answer these fundamental questions, we're just going to make sure that we do go through the steps thoroughly and take the time we need to get this done right. So if we could get this concluded by the end of 2024, that would be pretty good in my mind.
Okay, so 2024 is when, so you're coming back to us in the spring with a stakeholder report. This is the plan, and then we hope that we can have this done by 2024, correct?
Well, a plan in place by
A plan.
2024.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on now to our provisional budget, additional operating requests. Director Douglas, would you like to take this on?
Certainly. So just my report is a bit summary. We were asked to go away and come back with, different, a timing plan for hiring of staff. And so that's included in the report. But what I've done here is I've included a PowerPoint presentation. It kind of takes us back to where we were. And so it's just a couple slides here. I can't move it along. Oh, there we go. Okay, so at the last meeting, this is where we kind of ended. Provisional budget deficit of $1.16 million. Additional operating request of 903. This is the amount of additional operating requests that would require taxation. And so adding those two up, we're looking just over $2 million, which would be a 16% tax increase, then a 3% for cumulative transfer to capital. I have said through the budget process that, there's ways and means that we can look at balancing this. And my next slide kind of speaks to that. As we get closer to year end, we're able to kind of see where we've underspent in 2023 or may have additional funds that we can move from one year to the next. So these are numbers that at this point I'm comfortable with. As we go through the year end process, we'll get to know our numbers. We're still got a month to go here. And as we go through the year end process, we'll know, a little more exacting numbers. But so last year, 2022 to 2023, we brought forward about $250,000 in surplus to cover 2023 expenses. So I'm recommending, or I'm looking at $400,000 this year, which, is a savings of 3.14%. Some of our training budgets haven't been fully spent. So we can fund training from 23 to 24. It's recommended $85,000. Some of our legal accounts have been underspent. So once again, we can bring forward some legal money from 23 to 2024 of $85,000. Small paving, we have underspent that to the tune of $25,000. So we can bring that forward too. Interest in 2023 has been fairly strong. So we would bring that forward as well, $250,000. And the last meeting we talked about the Public Works looking at doing sewer collection work. And I was asked to provide a number that would be withdrawn from the general operating fund and then added to the sewer operating fund. So that's $57,000. So in total, we're looking at $902,000, which is a 7.11% savings to the previous slide. So I've kind of summarized it here altogether. So 16.28%, we take those budget reductions or moving things from 2003 to 24. reduction of 7.11% leaves taxation at 9.17%, plus the 3% cumulative. So in this attached, now we get to the report portion here. So we've looked at skewing the hires at a different rate. So if we look at attachment 1, at the bottom in the green box, you can see from taxation with the skewed hiring, we'd only be asking for $791,000. So the top part of this slide is the same with the provisional budget number. And then we add in the additional operating requests. I'm just calling this Plan B at this point of 791. Comes up to 15.4% increase. Taking those budget reductions or revenue transfers of 902,000. Taxation request would be just over $1 million, which is 8.29%, plus the 3% for transfer to capital. So from that, we would like to have discussion on where council sits or where we feel we're going from here, from this slide.
Council, questions first? Yes. Councilor Shepherd.
It's great to see the rebalancing that really helps mark our course as we sort of go through it. I thought one of the last components that wasn't answered at the first budget meeting was on the staffing requests. So perhaps I could direct to Director Douglas, this rebalancing, if you will, that assumes that we're hiring based on what's put forward by staff. Is that correct?
So if you go to page 7 of the agenda package, you can see at the top of that page 7, we were asked to look at pushing the hiring out into 2024. And so we have provided information there. Page 7. Right. So is everybody on page 7 of the agenda package?
Take your time.
We got time, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the top there, so we've reduced the amount of months for most of the hires, pushing them out a bit. So this new, this we can call Plan B here, is based on moving the hires out further into the year.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councilor Rowe.
So in that vein, though, we were not asking for a change in their FTE. So the following year, you'd be funding the difference, right?
Yes.
Just to be clear. Okay.
Correct, yes.
Thanks.
Any further? Okay, Councilor Toth.
Thank you. Looking at that chart on page 7. So parks maintenance position number 1 is showing as 12 months. I think I gathered from the presentation previously that this is basically being funded with casual support now. So this is somebody that we basically be able to fund properly. And seeing that there are 3 of them here that are listed as 11 months, that means we're going to hire somebody in February. So I'm just looking for confirmation on that.
That's correct.
Sorry, just to put a fine point on it, we're going to be hiring them pretty darn soon so they can start in February to be paid for 11 months. So that would be my question. Have we actually hired them?
Nobody's been hired at this point.
Thank you.
No further questions at this point. Okay, so where are we at? So we're looking at this, Director Douglas, we're looking at in terms of a tax increase at this point in time? Can we-
And staff are, we're looking for direction to how council would like to see us move forward. This is our ask at this point. If you want to provide us further direction or for us to provide other information, that'd be great, or
Okay.
we can move forward with some recommendations,
Okay, thank you. So my question is to the council. There doesn't seem to be any further questions around staffing. Does that mean that you're comfortable with this plan?
Saw a microphone on, but thank you, Chair.
Yes, Mayor Henderson.
Yeah, staffing is always difficult because I don't want it to appear that we're ungrateful or unappreciative of what our hardworking staff are doing. But as a general comment, I have real fundamental concerns, and I've expressed this privately and or in previous meetings and elsewhere that if I read it correctly, a $220 or $240 increase for an average home. We've got to find some savings. Council, I think we have to focus on how do we save some money, whether that's a reduction of services or delaying some things. I just think this is a very difficult year that we're facing for most people, and we've got to do our bit to tighten our belt. Thank you.
Councilor Shepherd?
I guess I agree with it in terms of giving direction to staff moving forward with the process. I would be in favor at this stage of accepting or moving ahead with the budget plan B, but perhaps continuing to look for areas, and I don't know, perhaps it's more capital where we could try and reduce the 8.29% increase down to ideally what our increase was last year. Thank you.
All right. So one of the questions that so what I'm hearing so far is that at this point, with the exception of Mayor Henderson, who has expressed that he is concerned about expenses and in terms of what's ahead of our taxpayers, I'm also hearing that staffing at this point that council, the rest of council are comfortable with in terms of supporting this. No, I see Councillor Toth. Yeah, sorry, Councillor McLaughlin.
That's fine. Thank you through the chair. Continuing on those points, I'm sure we all have something to say. I find it's too high of a tax request for this year especially. I mean, people are reeling from their financial situation. People with mortgages are reeling. People trying to pay for food, especially with families, are reeling. I think we should probably not be so worried about, I mean, I don't want to use it trivially, but nickel and diming in terms of staffing. Those are staff positions for people that really need jobs in this community and services apparently we need. So I don't see why we're worrying about whether somebody starts 1 month or a couple months later. It seems very trivial in terms of what we're facing here. I would like to see perhaps the 3% reserve forfeited this year, not pursuing that, to give taxpayers a break. Also, I would like to see all the Green Community Fund projects put on hold for this year and not funded this year to give taxpayers a break. And that would help businesses as well as all of our residents. That's my feeling on it. And to be well below 7%, maybe 5%. I mean, if anything, because every time we have a percentage increase, it just continues next year cumulatively, year after year, forever. So we never reduce our taxes, right? So just to say, oh, it's only 7% or something, or 12 or whatever, is just, to me, under these circumstances, I think it's a good year to pull in the reins and give people a break that really need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. I'll hear from Councillor Toth first. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, just wanted to respond.
Yes.
I think you're meaning the Growing Communities Fund,
Yeah.
not the green.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the Growing Communities Fund is not taxation. So even if we spend nothing out of it for 10 years, it's still not going to have a taxation impact. I'm uncomfortable with the taxation number as well. I'd like to see it in a single digit. I'm not going to make a motion to that effect or anything like that. I think, you know, $240 on the average home. You're looking at $20 a month on $1 million home. And so if you're, you know, low income or you're in a lower valued home, that impact is significantly less than that to you. One thing, I'm not totally comfortable with the staffing requests at this point. I'm going to throw a recommendation on the floor and we'll just see if it sticks. Which would be that the Parks Maintenance Position 2 be deferred to the 2025 budget cycle.
Director Douglas, please.
Okay, so we're having some really good conversation about where you want to feel the tax rate be at. And I think we'd love to stay there. The Parks number 2 position is our third priority on that list. So if we were to look at, you know, a percentage and we had to either cut a position or defer a position, that wouldn't be the first one that staff would recommend.
Okay, so just put a hold on this for a second. I want to just kind of summarize. So what I'm hearing is that people are not comfortable with the proposed tax in Plan B, which is 11.6%, I believe, too. So what I'd like to ask council at this point, what are we looking at? What kind of increase are you comfortable with this year? Can we think of a number here? Because it help us work towards, you know, preparing what we do what we need to do to make this budget. And then I hear one of our council members wanting to eliminate the 3% capital cost this year. So I have two things that I'd like council's input on. Yes, please.
If we could have a conversation where, you know, council is, you know, we have heard 7.2-ish because that was our number from last year, plus the 3%. I've heard 5%. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, including that, it includes the 3%.
No, the 7.2 was is before the 3%.
Yeah.
The 3% is our probably number one priority over everything at this point. It's a contribution to capital that is growing still. We're not even near the top end of where we need to be with the 3%. Right, so.
So the question is, what tax rate are you comfortable with at this point? And where are you at with the 3%?
Oh boy.
Councillor Rowe.
We deferred 3% in 2020 and retrospectively, I know we had some, at least personally, some misgivings about that afterwards. I'm not in favor of deferring that. If anything, it should be 4. I'm not saying that as a resolution, but I have concerns that it's actually not high enough. I think we had years and years and years where there wasn't an investment, and we unfortunately, literally are paying the price politically and in our taxes. That's a fact. So I'm not interested in that going away. I would like further than that, you know, if we were at about 5%, outside of the 3%, that's kind of where my comfort zone is. I also know that like the demand on our certain services such as parks, again, is massive. And a lot of the social issues that the Sunshine Coast has, because they're occurring in Sechelt primarily, fall to our staff. So I'm not in favor of scrapping those positions, although Councillor Toth did just say the second position. But I would be, if we were looking at reducing the ask for staffing, I'd be looking at what from these guys over here, what their priorities would be. That's where I'm at.
Thank you. Comments, councillors?
Thank you. Yeah, that 3%, just like Councillor Rose said, absolutely critical. We did defer it that 1 year, not knowing what COVID was going to bring us. And at the end of the day, we probably should have carried on with it. All in, I did mention single digit. So I guess that 9.99 is, you know, what I want to see in the headline. Anything below that's a bonus, to be perfectly honest. So I'm hearing 7 to 10.
So any other comments? Let me ask it, Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, yes, through the chair before we go on to more items, ideas. I was just thinking to comment back on the Growing Communities Fund, that's about $3 million. And even though you can say if we used it this year, it wouldn't be taxation money, it would be money we could have in our piggy bank that would avoid projects that we would be taxing for in the coming years. So to me, I think it's worth keeping in the piggy bank. If you want reserves, there's kind of one for you, $3 million. And so, because I don't see any of those projects on there as being critical at this point. Also, I think getting grants in the future might be trickier. We know we have a bit of an uncertain future. We don't know if interest rates will go up, if we're going to pay more for things we have loans for, but hopefully they'll go down a bit, but who knows? It may get worse. So I just think bringing it down as low as possible is really important and would be something that I think taxpayers would like, especially given we know at the regional district level, we're going to get big bills this year, bigger. And we know it's going to cost for landfill, for water. That's a given. We all definitely need that. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Douglas.
Thank you. It will be the next kind of segment will be on capital. So if right now we're trying to focus in on the operating side of it, and then we'll have a wholesome conversation with the capital.
Thank you. We will, we're not going to lose sight of that one. Lachlan. So is it possible at this point that we can at least, I don't know if we need to do this, so help me along. This is new to me. Can we make a motion on whether we all support the 3% capital costs? Can we at least make one motion on that? Can we separate that? Yes? Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that we will include the 3% capital cost or capital cost in this year's budget. All in favor? Oh, any seconders? Thank you, Councilor Shepherd.
I'll third it.
Mary, thank you. Okay,
Can I
thank you.
come back to the, some of the other things? There was reference, and it reminds me, reference to, some of the costs like community safety and so on, which I put in a basket called downloading. And the amount of money that we have incurred in 2023 on behalf of others, other jurisdictions, other governments is, I think, quite significant. And it would be a useful exercise, I suggest, for staff to provide us with an indication of what those downloaded amounts would cost. Because we are taxing for them, even though they're perhaps the responsibility of another jurisdiction. So I suppose I'd test council's will by proposing that as a motion, that we get a staff report on the costs incurred for services that are the responsibility of other jurisdictions.
Counselor Toth?
With regards to community safety, are you thinking specifically, or? are we
I'm
talking
not,
about-
I'd be curious to, if there are other things I might not be aware of, but community safety and mental health and addiction treatment. We know that we've got people in public works and parks and upstairs that are putting a lot of time in on a whole range of things. So I'm not trying to make a huge amount of work, but I'd like to get a flavor, because I think we're talking millions of dollars.
Counselor Shepherd?
To the chair, I'm interested in that exercise, but after this budget process. It's, I don't know how much time it's going to take staff to pull that out there all together to make judgments on what is a downloaded cost or not. I think it is interesting, but I just like to make we're on a fairly tight time frame for the budget process, so I'd be happy to see it afterwards.
So, given, I'd like to, Director Douglas, do you have a comment on that in terms of the amount of work it may take, et cetera?
Yeah, at this point, I don't know. We'll have to dig into the departments and where they're spending their time. So a little bit of time, but you know, it would be nice to do it after we kind of get a jump on some of this, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mayor Henderson, is that acceptable?
No, it's a motion.
It's a motion. Okay, so seconder is Mr. Councillor Toth. Okay, all in favor? Oh, discussion. I got to remember the discussion piece. I'm doing great. I'm getting confused.
Sorry, could you hear the motion again?
Hang on, let me regroup. Let's hear the motion again, please. Thank you. Please.
The motion that I heard, and please correct me, the mover can correct me if I've missed anything, that a staff report on costs incurred for services that are the responsibility of other jurisdictions, including community safety and mental health and addiction services, be brought forward at a future meeting.
The last bit was a part of the conversation. So if we want to leave those phrases in, I'd say including but not limited to mental, community safety and mental health.
Discussion?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate leaving the motion open-ended and that it says future meeting and not, a January committee meeting, because that allows it to play out after we get through budget, possibly. I did ask for that clarification about what might be included, because if our public works guys throw a $500 pail of asphalt repair into the highway somewhere, I don't really want them trying to dig up the tracking to identify that they spent that $500 on a pail of asphalt repair. I think there are certain things that are just sort of a given in our community. It really is, I think, the additional burdens of community safety, health, mental well-being, BC housing issues. That's my priority. Thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I think some of this information will come forward as we try and do a community services plan. It's the soft services that we need to maybe talk about and consider, and that we have a idea to start a plan such as that. And yeah, to make numbers be chased down on certain types of issues or whatever at this point is not really, I think, going to help our financial planning that we need to get done. But again, I don't want it to become a key point of discussion of downloading. I mean, the fact is, yes, there's some downloading, but in order to serve our communities, we need to provide these services to some extent. And it's happening all over, and quibbling over it and making a big issue out of it, I think at this point, even over the next year, is kind of maybe a waste of energy. If we could just get started on a community services plan and start understanding what services we provide, where and how, we might have a way to move forward in the next few years to just know what we're doing, where we're going, and why. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd?
Just to reiterate my point, again, I am interested in that number, but as long as I appreciate the motion leaves it open-ended, but I'd really like to see that after the budget process. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is Councillor, what's your name again? Councillor Rowe.
I mean, my head spins at what kind of how deep this dive for information could go, and it's hard to know what to attribute certain things to. I guess maybe it doesn't matter if it's ultimately a provincial government responsibility. I'm just not sure what the end game is. So what do we want to do with the information if we're going to ask staff to do the work? What is it for our own information, or what then would we do with it, in your thoughts? Would we use it like sort of in advocacy roles, or?
First of all, when we provide any service, we expect somebody to pay us for it. So we tax, we look for grants as a way of paying for things we want to do. So in the first instance, it would give some clarity and transparency to our taxpayers of what are they getting for their tax dollars. Absolutely, it's about advocacy, and frankly, I would be in support of sending the province, if that's the jurisdiction we're referring to, an invoice. And these are real costs that we're incurring, and it's through no fault of our own. You know, it's supposed to be provided by others, and it's right now it's not.
Thank you.
So where are we at? I hear that there is some support of this, and I hear that it's a timeline issue. I think the best thing is to call the motion, unless there's amendment to the motion in terms of adding a timeline. I don't know if that's possible. Move it to next year. Okay. So I'm going to call all in favor of the motion. Councillor Shepherd. Those not in favor, oh, sorry, and Mayor Henderson, and those not in favor? Overruled. Pardon me? Okay, repeat the motion. Would you like the motion repeated?
No, Chair, I was just indicating that you should state the outcome of the motion for those
Okay,
listening at home.
the motion was defeated. Thank you. Thank you.
Carrying on then with something else, we've done a few projects this year that are one-time or particularly significant projects that have incurred a lot of staff time. And and obviously they're not going to continue. The one that is uppermost in my mind is the amount of time that we put into short-term rentals. We're not going to have to do that again. That will presumably be replaced with other work, but I haven't seen in this budget, well, there's two things. Like how much savings will we realize because we don't have to do the same thing this year that we did last year? And then the other observation I'd make for council is that we actually, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, I mean that sincerely, we overtaxed last year because we had a surplus. So not a criticism, but the fact is that's why we're talking about numbers that are quite a bit lower than the top level numbers, because we have surpluses from last year. I don't want to see us taxing this year to have a big surplus at the end of 2024. I think that's not fair to our taxpayers. So two things. One is I'd like to, in the next round of the budget discussion, to see where the savings going to come from. And then are we in fact budgeting so that we will use all this money in 2024?
Thank you. Director Douglas?
So as we prepared the budget, we prepared with the intention of spending it all. However, certain things can happen throughout the year. Like a staff member leaves and it takes us 4 months to replace that person. Or a project gets delayed, or, you know, there's things that can happen within the budget year. And so, you know, we don't have, you know, excess built into the budget. The budget is based on, you know, people say for training, going to these sets of training. We have budgeted for the allotment of staff we currently have, which is our biggest budget item. We have 20,000 contingency in council and 100,000 contingency in the general operating fund, of which if we don't spend it 1 year, we don't re-tax it again for the next year. So, you know, if we taxed for it once 2 years ago, we didn't spend it last year, so it's covering this year's as well, right? So from like an overall cost savings, you know, what we budgeted is what we expect to spend. We have seen increased interest this year, which has been probably will last another couple months, 3 months into the year, and then they talk that their interest rate will likely come back down a bit. So, you know, that's one of the things that's driving our surplus in 2023 is the interest.
Thank you. Mayor Henderson? Do you have, are these questions? Did Director Douglas answer your questions, or did you have a motion?
No, I don't think I have a motion at this point. I just go back to the basics. We've got to be looking at every source, every opportunity to reduce our spending. I take no pleasure in saying it, but I agree with Councillor McLaughlin. People are reeling.
Okay, thank you. Before we go any further, I think we're still at staffing at this point. We have also put on the table in terms of council, in terms of a comfort level for where we want to be with the tax increase. What I'm hearing anywhere from 7 to 9%, which includes the 3% capital cost. So that's something to keep in mind, whether we want to come up with that number at this point. I'm not sure if we need to, but Director Douglas, do you have a comment on that, whether we need to come up with that?
It would be nice to have a number we can then go back and, you know, finish the 2024 budget and start work building out the 5-year financial plan.
Okay.
Right. So it's you know, so, you know, the delay is not sure about the delay. You
Okay.
know, I know it's comfort, but if we're to build a 2024 budget, keep building it, we need to have a number that we're comfortable with to see what that's going to look like.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'm just wondering with our strategic plan, has it been wholly adopted? Because I'm just wondering if this budget really does reflect this council strategic plan, especially if you're building a 5-year capital plan on it. I'm just a little concerned about the cart and the horse and all that. So maybe a bit of a lens on that, even if it's not fully adopted by council. I don't think it was. So is it? So it should be reflected fully in this report. And I kind of see references to kind of the old strategic plan and maybe the one we came up with. It's not really clear to me what our real priorities are and how this budget really addresses that in a different way. Thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin, is there something that you see missing in this that is included in the strategic plan? Something specific?
Well, some of the reports make reference to the strategic plan and how these address it. And so I was a little looking at them and thinking, which strategic plan was that? And yeah, it just didn't come through in a clear way for me in terms of managing it.
Other comments? Yes.
To the chair, just perhaps a comment on Councilor McLaughlin's point. If you take a look at the capital projects new requests, there are items such as land acquisition or monies from the accelerator fund to look for land. So that definitely was, I think, part of the strategic plan to look for more opportunities for social housing.
Any others? Any other comments? Okay. Sorry, Director Dillon.
Sorry. I just want to say, because our team was involved with the business case preparation. When we did those, we had a drop-down menu on the business cases, and those were the new priorities that we were using.
Okay. I'm going to wait until Councillor Rowe comes back. Yeah, yes. Take 5 minutes. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone, to our continued discussion around budget 24. And my question now is, we've had some discussion about staffing and the proposal for staffing. I'd like to ask council if we are ready to make a motion on this, or do we need to move it forward? Are there any further questions around staffing the proposal? I have one question, and my question is around the community safety coordinator. I'd like to know a little bit more about that in terms of what's the future of that position, and yeah, that's my.
Thank you for the question. So I did speak with the incumbent, and we talked about it being a temporary for the 1 year and then looking at reevaluating the position just based on the infancy of the community safety task force. And so if we were to fund it for the remaining 4 months after the grant funding is over, we could see how we're utilizing that and revisit this at the end of 2024.
Further question, and is this part of, and this is also maybe a question, in terms of what their roles and responsibilities are, does it fit in with the community safety committee, some of their goals and objectives?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. It does do those things such as speed watch that they had spoken about. But now with Karen Whitby, they are working more with the community safety task force and moving some of those action items from there. So in the last 3 months, the position has been attending the meetings and walking away with action items. So they are tightly intertwined with the community safety task force.
Thank you. Any other questions around staffing? Yes, Councillor Shepherd.
Not a question specifically about staffing, but I guess to go back to my earlier point, I'm in favor of moving ahead with what staff have recommended, but I agree with a point that Councillor Toth made, which is to go back to staff for round 2 of the budget and ask if there's anything that could be pushed into 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Douglas?
We certainly could do that. In addition to that, we could, I guess what we're looking for is a number that you're also comfortable with, that we could build a budget to and show you what's included in that. Right, so that would then also, we would be considering the staff asks as well in a number. Right, but if we, like, we're just talking here a little bit that if we could, get from council that to go and build a budget, 2024 budget based on a certain percentage. It's a lot of work for us and we're prepared to do that. And then we would come back and show you what that would include or wouldn't include from our lists.
And you're referring to the overall tax rate is what you're
Yes.
talking about, okay? Comments, discussion?
I guess if that's the route that helps move this ahead quickly, we could march through everyone, ask what everyone's comfortable with. As I said before, I'm comfortable with moving ahead at this stage with if we could target last year's budget increase. 7 plus 3%.
So that is a 9.2%, is that correct?
It'd be 10.2.
7.2 plus the 3%.
10.2, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, 10.2, yeah.
Comments, discussion? Councillor Todd.
Councillor Inkster snuck in when we weren't paying attention.
Welcome, Councillor Inkster.
Welcome. I know that providing a very specific number to staff would be advantageous, but I think if we were looking to try and all agree to a specific number, we could be here till midnight. I don't know. I mean, 10.2 is pretty close to what I said, which was 9.9. So do I quibble over 45 cents to the average homeowner? No. So yeah, thanks.
It's a good comment. Any other comments, questions? I mean, we can certainly, yes, sorry. Counselor, who was that hand? You cut your mic off. Mayor Henderson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think at this point, I'm very much in favor of challenging staff to find every bit of savings they can without giving them a number. Thank you.
Comments, questions? Councilor
Yeah,
McLaughlin.
thank you to the chair. I was just thinking back to the strategic plan and thinking, for some of these projects, I would like to see a little more detail on what's in the drop downs. Like, can you say through a project or whatever's brought forward, is there a measurable objective that we can say, this is how you're addressing a strategic aspect? Because, you know, we didn't get to that level of detail, but certainly I think all the budgets operating and capital that we go ahead are going to either have to support that capital plan and have some rationale behind them that we can stand behind, which is often a measurable objective, or not. And so I think if we could have that, so we could prioritize and evaluate that and have that for the public to see, I think that would be more helpful. But it's just too much, I think, given the circumstances that people are facing in Shelby Estates.
Councilor McLaughlin, can you please just clarify what it is you're needing from staff?
Well, I mean.
Give me an example. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Right, yeah. Well, for instance, just opening it up, project on page 173 of 205, project 7388, strategic plan initiative, effective growth. Saying regarding parks and community infrastructure. Okay, so we've applied for some funding for that. If we don't get the funding for that, you know, we may not pursue it, or we may want to pursue it. We might find other funding for it, but like, what is a measurable objective to show that's effective growth? Is it number of homes you expect to be built in 3 years or something? Just some kind of measure, so that for each thing, we have measurable objectives that address our strategic plan. Thank you.
And my thinking is that's certainly something I think that we would need to, we'll work on as well as we go forward around the strategic plan. Thank you.
Well, it's hard for us to do as a council, really. It would be helpful to have staff identify that and track it for us, because, you know, we're administrating, we're not really doing all the work, although I'd like to do the work in some respect, but it's too much for me to do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, thank you. Coming in just now, I was detecting that we're to that point in the financial deliberations where council picks tax rates that we're comfortable with. And I remember when we were talking about 1% and 2% and 3%, that was before the capital piece that we add the 3% on. So that's changed things quite a bit, but that was also back in the day when there was more money in the bank that we were talking about 1% and 2% and 3%. So I would like to see us look at savings wherever we can. I also would like to know what staff and or maybe council helps with this, sees in other jurisdictions. We can always say we're better than a Soyuz, but what does it mean to neighboring jurisdictions and like communities such as Parksville, Qualicum Beach? Is there a comparison of right now? I think this was given
Look
to
at
us,
that.
given to us a week Oh, ago. okay, I probably, yeah, okay. No. Is this right now? Oh, okay, thanks.
And what are you reading? What do you see Parksville as?
If I can find it, then, you probably don't want to wait while I find it, but, there's other things to talk about, but I'll look and
Okay.
that's helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Say something.
Councillor Rowe.
Chair, I think it's fair to say that we're not going to come to a number
Yes.
here. As much as Director Douglas, I hear numbers from this side of the table. Councillor Inkster's just got here. And there's, different strategies that have been put forward here. So I would suggest that we're going to have to move on.
Great, thank you. Suggest,
Thank you, Chair. I got one quick question in that, I'm wondering, I've got it in one of my agenda documents somewhere. But I'm wondering if staff could provide us with the, inflation number that they know of to this point for 2023. Because when we're considering our budget for next year, that number is a cut in services. So really, anything above that number is where we're able to explore. I think.
Douglas, possible?
It's certainly, yeah. But, yep.
So here we are. Let's just take a moment now. We're at the point now of we've determined that we're not at a point yet to look at the overall tax increase. I want to go back though to the staffing before we move on from this. Do we need more time here? Can we give more direction to the staff at this point? Where are we at, Council? Councillor Todd.
Thank you. I'm not comfortable with committing, yes to certain positions with staff having some indication of where we would like to target a tax increase, because we might say yes to things that are directly in the face of them trying to accomplish what we're also asking them to do. I'm more comfortable, deferring things, obviously, as I tried a motion earlier. But for now, I think we just need to see what comes back at Plan C.
So is there a motion there that we need to make? No. Okay, so we are going to defer. We're going to move on in terms of the staffing at this point. Is there anything that needs to go back to staff? Oh, I'm sorry, Director Douglas.
Okay, so, so between now and the next meeting, what is it that council would like us to do
Exactly.
to help move this along?
Yes. Councillor Shepherd?
Just between now and the next meeting, I wonder if staff could take a look at the ask for new full-time positions and advise if any of them could be deferred till 2025.
I think I would also ask to prioritize. And I'm also wondering if the community safety coordinator, since sort of looking at that for a year and reevaluating whether does it have to be full-time? Could it be funded from a source other than taxation? That's it.
Someone answer that? You don't need an answer. Okay, so that's a question going forward. Now, do you have, Director Douglas, do you have the questions that you need answered for next round of budget?
I'm going to summarize what I've heard. So we'll look through the budget again, look for any savings. We will look through just so we know that the list is in a priority order from a staffing perspective. We'll look at what staffing we may be able to defer for this year to next year. And there was a third one.
Councillor Rowe, it was around the safety coordinator.
Safety coordinator specifically.
And you asked whether it was possible, whether there's another way of funding that, correct?
Yes, if we're just looking at funding it for a year.
And other funding.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions that Director Douglas, before we move on? Yes, Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I just looking at page 6, I look at the number of the positions because that's what we were just referencing, and I'm wondering if some of them work better in terms of bringing on it. I'm assuming based on the 12 months proposal, though, that's already in action. If it says 12 months, the first position, but just because it would be a January hire, as far as I can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, a casual sitting in that position right now.
Pardon?
A casual sitting in that position right now,
Oh,
so,
okay.
yes.
Okay, I always, yeah, okay, well, so it's happening, I guess. Because some of the positions I'm wondering if there's some seasonality to the hire of certain positions, like you may not need parks workers, although I think 2 are very important, that you may not need parks workers until the growing season starts, and then you definitely will need more. So I just wonder about things like that.
Okay.
Thanks.
So am I hearing that in addition to the other questions, is there an opportunity to look at when the hiring is being done? So.
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think in this process, and I'm sure some of this has been done, but I'd ask staff to tighten the pressure to potentially accept a reduction in services. I'm not sure that it would be necessary. I referenced earlier that some capacity was used for one-off projects, and maybe that capacity can be reallocated to some of the projects. But I'm glad we're not trying to get on a number, because I agree we would be here all night trying to get from what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking. So I think it's artificial, but I really would encourage staff not just to say it's the status quo plus, but let's recognize if we had to reduce the number, what would we give up in the way of services if that's in fact necessary? Thank you.
Yep, we'll look at that.
Thank you.
Are we moving ahead to capital or? Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we got about just over 15 minutes to try and get through some of this. So we provided a new capital list that will end up in our next version of the book, unless there's further reductions to this. I was prepared to have Katie just to go through the changes with council, if you want to do that. And just for your knowledge, we're on page 10 of 205.
Thank you and good afternoon. As Director Douglas mentioned, on page 10 of the agenda, you will see a revised 2024 capital project listing. There were 5 changes made to the proposed 2024 capital plan, which include changes in funding sources and budget request reductions. The first item is under vehicles and equipment, where the funding of $55,000 for the new bylaw vehicle was changed to the CAREP reserve from the COVID-19 Safe Restart Reserve. The new bylaw vehicle will now be an electric vehicle in order to qualify for CAREP funding. The next change is in the building facility renewal project, which was decreased from $120,000 to $80,000. The total annual budget requirement for this item is 120,000, and with an estimated carryover budget amount of 40,000, the additional amount required for 2024 is 80,000. Next is the IT infrastructure maintenance enhancement project. The funding for this project was reallocated to use all available funds in the COVID-19 Safe Restart Reserve. There was a decrease in $5,000 from the capital reserve and an increase by the same amount from the COVID-19 Safe Restart Reserve. The budget for the capital engagement, design, planning, and permitting project was also decreased. The total annual budget requirement for this item is 200,000, with an estimated carryover budget of 164,000. The additional amount required for 2024 is 36,000. And finally, the district-wide transportation safety improvements budget was decreased by 16,000. The total annual budget requirement for this item is 120,000, with an estimated carryover budget of 16,000. The additional amount required for 2024 is now 104,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors?
Chair, hello.
Sorry, Mayor Henderson.
I just wanted to clarify, the airport, with the lighting and all the work that is going on do we have everything, is it in the current year that we expect to need to spend?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. At the last meeting, we didn't have the right people in the room, I think, to give a comprehensive answer on what the Chapman Creek Flood Mitigation Phase 1 project actually was. Certainly, I expressed my discomfort at moving forward with it in our budget. I'm just wondering if I could hear a little bit more from engineering staff about what exactly this is supposed to be.
Mr. Gillen?
Yes, Chair, the project is backed by a consultant study done by Tetra Tech a few years back that identified mitigation that was required from, future flooding and climate change. We haven't implemented the plan. Last winter, there was a flooding event where Shishal was flooded out. They went ahead and put a berm around their affected properties, but what would end up happening in a future flood event is the water would actually come over district land into Shishal, and then it would be held there within that bermed area. So in order to avoid that, we'd be acting sooner on our flood mitigations work and continuing the berm upstream up Chapman so that the water is not, going over into from district lands into the First Nation lands. So this was a specific request from Shishal that we put this forward to council so that we could build our portion of that Chapman flood works. So that's what this item is for. Thank you.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, is there a cost share agreement with the nation on this, given that this is going to mostly benefit them? Alternatively, our staff exploring any other flood mitigation grant funding that might be available either from the province or the feds? Thanks.
Director Dillon.
Thank you. There's no cost sharing being put forward for this particular thing. It's on district land, so they haven't proposed any to us, and they didn't look for any cost sharing on their portion as well. In terms of grant funding opportunities, this is one that we could put off. If we were to put off, we could look for a grant funding opportunity. Put it later just means that if something were to happen this year and the subsequent years, or until we get funding for this, then it would be an issue. So this year, this is supposed to be an El Nino year. They're predicting lower than normal precipitation. So, we might be okay this year, but we'd have to look for those grant opportunities and go for them.
Thank you. One more follow-up with the Tetra Tech study that identified this area as being a concern. I don't recall the specific study, so I haven't read it. I don't know what it's all about. Did it take into consideration sea level rise, climate change concerns? Like, I wonder if we're building this berm, I'll call it a berm because it's not a dike, but if we're doing this berm work here, that we're gonna find out in a few years is now a lovely point in which people can sit and look out into the ocean and everything that's come up around it. Thanks.
Mr. Dillon? Good.
I'm actually pulling, I could provide a copy of the report, and I think I misspoke when I said Tetra Tech. It was actually Kerwood Lydell, and Tetra Tech might have been a sub to them. But I have the report pulled up right in front of me, and I can absolutely pass that along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions, councillors?
Chair.
A moment, sorry, I'll be right there. Mayor Henderson.
Thank you, thank you. I wonder if staff could explain again if they've learned anything new about what we can use the Growing Communities Fund for, because the reading of the I suppose the stuff on the website makes it look like it's got to be new projects that are growing, help growing the community. And I want to be sure we're not anticipating overly optimistic that we could use this funding.
Nothing new. In my read of that, it doesn't indicate that needs to be new projects. It just has to be within the eligible project stream, which I think I sent everybody the links to that from one meeting to the next.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, I'm just reading the little summary of all the different grant programs and reserves and things that was sent out to us. It says Growing Communities Fund grant support to delivery of infrastructure projects necessary to enable community growth. So I don't really see how that applies to this project. And I think, you know, moving forward, we've been mandated by the province to provide residential growth. So there's probably lots of things we could apply this funding to. So I would rather us not apply it in this case and wait and find some climate adaptation funding for it.
So is there a question there, Councillor McLaughlin? Is the question you would like that fund used differently?
Yes, that's basically it. But I think we need to take a pretty strict look at the requirements of this and use it to our advantage rather than use it as kind of a general slush fund, because I don't want to see it wasted. It's a one-shot special deal that we got there. So let's cherish it. Thank you.
Chair, just to follow, is there a mechanism where we can seek advance approval? I mean, where we say this is what we want to do, will it meet the requirements?
I certainly can find that out. This isn't something that they're auditing either. We have to report this on our financial statements. So that's where they'll see the information.
In reference to not necessarily draining funds, but looking for funding that may be in the same area, climate action, because obviously many communities are dealing with climate change and mitigation. Can we not necessarily fund from that fund and do an amendment? Because we're not taxing. So can we not necessarily fund, but doing a financial amendment to the plan in future if we need to draw from that fund to deal with the issue, if in fact we're not able to determine that there's additional funding coming and or funding
opportunities coming from the province and the feds regarding climate mitigation.
Certainly that can happen, yeah.
Okay, Chair, that's what I would love to see is us be just because we're not taxing. So we're not committing to that taxation pieces to us to look at some of these and maybe make amendments to the financial plan based on the fact that we have money sitting there in those accounts and to look for additional opportunities to find that climate action funding. Although I think the feds in the province are going to be getting a lot of encouragement and requests for those kinds of funding, but what may help us is that we're close to the ocean with sea rise, so.
Okay, anything else? Director Douglas, do you have what you need now to move forward on this? I believe a couple of questions came out of this.
Yes, yes, but maybe not.
Okay.
Is there other direction that council would like to give staff before we go away for a couple of weeks to work on this list? Because otherwise this list will just come back again.
Exactly.
And so I don't want to lose that time if council has other thoughts on the list.
Yeah, so one of the comments was looking for another reserve, I guess, or another opportunity. I think that was one of them. Anything else? This is the time now to do it if you can, council. So they have some opportunity to work on it. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to the Chapman Creek flood mitigation, you know, when we look at Gale Avenue slope remediation, another one being suggested to fund from the Growing Community Reserve or Growing Community Fund. So those two projects together are $900,000. I would like to see us try and find if there is other funds. I don't think there's anything else necessarily within our own reserves that might be more appropriate for these, other than shuffling some things around and doing it, funding this work from the capital reserve. But I would be very interested to know if there are other grant opportunities available for both of those projects. That's the second and third ones under drainage in the middle of the page. So Gale Avenue slope remediation and Chapman Creek flood mitigation phase 1.
Thank you. Director Douglas?
So although we can look at that, that's one project that can't be delayed. So no matter what, we have to find funding for that one.
Okay.
Yep.
So the answer is that's a possibility that can be delayed.
No,
No?
can't be delayed,
Can't be
but
delayed.
we will look at other
Okay,
funding.
gotcha. Sorry. I'll get my hearing aids fixed later. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? I know that one of the comments was made earlier about the Growing Community Fund. And that was made earlier around possibly depleting that fund in terms of there's a concern around that. Anything further on that so that I've got it as a note here? Yes.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I would like a table prepared with the projects listed and the amounts and also a column with the funds they're coming from, which we can use to sort, but also in terms of their strategic directions that is chosen so that, you know, if we want to look at as a council focusing on a certain strategic aspect, then we can at least say that, you know, this year, this is a priority. Next year, we can't do everything every year, I don't think. And we have some carryover projects. So I would like to be able to sort that out and figure out what possible savings could be put next year so that we don't, as Mayor Henderson was saying, have too many carryover projects and too much money floating around and asking taxpayers this year in particular for money that we're really not maybe going to get around to spending. And also having too many projects carrying over in that, it puts stress on staff and then it requires more staffing. And I just find it's kind of like stumbling along, meaning well, of course, but.
So, sorry, Councilor
that
McLaughlin,
would
your
help.
question, please.
Yeah, my question is, can they provide a table that I can have an Excel that can help me prioritize the strategic aspects that are used? And
Director DeGo. Douglas?
So that's been sent out to council already. You have a table in front of you that has the list of projects. I also sent out a Excel spreadsheet of all these projects in a table. So I'm not sure what you're asking for.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm asking that the actual strategic item that's addressed in each of the proposals be included in that table so that it could be sorted that way. Thank you.
All right. We're 3:30.
Yes.
3:29. So I'm basically bringing this list back unless I get further direction. So if council, as you made a query about funding from the Growing Communities Fund, I've heard that council may not want to spend that level, but I have no motion to go back and work on that. So if there's a thought on that, I would like to hear that because I have 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks here that I don't want to waste on not just providing the same sheets.
Exactly. Okay, so we have two questions. Can we take those before we break? And then we have a question from Director Douglas around what he needs before he goes back. So he's not coming back with the same list. Let's be very clear about what we need from him when he comes back, if there's any changes that need to be made. Okay. So Councillor Inkster first, please.
Not sure if this answers Director Douglas's question, but further down the line of just trying to find ways to do a number of projects with reserves and or monies outside taxation. I was wondering if with gas tax, if there's a predictability in gas tax and when that's awarded, because we're looking at reserves and money in front of us, but there's always a predictability of gas tax if in fact that's another thing that we could rely on in the next number of months to fund some of these projects. I mean, we seem to like sidewalks a lot in the last few years. So could it come from there?
So your question is, can we use the gas tax?
Well, and
for
the
this?
predictability-ness of future gas tax, could it be utilized for some of the projects? Because we know it's usually the same amount every year.
Okay, thank you.
It's
Director Douglas.
annually, it's just over $500,000.
Yeah.
And we spend a good chunk of that each and every year through capital as well. So I think in this plan, we're looking at spending $580,000 of that, the reserve money.
But there's future years where we get awarded in next year. And because we're starting so early with our taxation chair, we will tend to go into next year's awarding of those kinds of monies.
Yep.
Right.
And that's what this is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In terms of the list, I know Dr. Douglas wants certainty, so I am fine with the existing list as it is. Thank you.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Just following up, I've got a motion here, but I'm going to follow up on Councillor Inkster's comment first, and that my understanding is that gas tax is ending. It's up for renewal. The Community Works Building Fund, whatever it's called this week. And so I don't think we've heard yet about what the federal government's commitment is going to be for the program going forward. I just wanted confirmation of that and then come back to me because I'll have a motion here.
Do we have further information on that?
I have no further information, but there in my circle of financial officers, they don't see it ending. There's just the end to the agreement and there'll be a new agreement.
Back
Okay.
to you.
Yeah.
Back to you, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Recognizing that there is one project on here that we possibly can actually defer, I'd like to make a motion to defer the Chapman Creek Flood Mitigation Phase 1 project to 2025, pending exploration of other grant opportunities.
Further discussion?
Yeah.
So second, Councillor Shepherd. Further discussion?
I have a second.
You're seconding. Okay, great. All in favor? Opposed? Nope. Okay. Is your microphone, what, John? Okay. Thank you. Passed. Okay. So we're at the end of this meeting now. Is there anything else in terms of any further information to give to Director Douglas as he leaves today? And anything he needs to change in coming back other than the motion that was made? I heard one comment that Adam, Councillor Shepherd is fine with this. Any others? Where are we at? Okay, Councillor Rowe?
I'm fine with this list as well. And I'd be willing to make a motion that we accept the rest of the list outside of that one item that's was in the past motion. That was a terrible motion. And see how council feels about it. No, not yours, mine.
At this point.
My motion is the 2024 capital projects new request list be approved and incorporated into the budget 2024.
Thank you.
With the exception of the Chapman Creek
Thank you. Can you please
flood
read-
mitigation phase 1 project.
Can you please read the motion?
That the 2024 capital projects list be approved with the exception of the Chapman Creek flood mitigation project.
Right. Second? Councillor Shepherd, discussion? Councillor McLaughlin?
I'm just concerned, is this just all moving forward, all the items on this list? Coming up for approval without further discussion on each item? Or will we have a chance to go through this in some more detail?
No, we're, pardon me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're moving for, this is a motion to move forward. Councillor Top.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not comfortable moving forward with the rest of the list at this time,
Okay.
but only because I may want to, well, I'm going to take an opportunity to look at the Growing Community Fund and other items within this list that perhaps should be funded from a different source. So I'm okay with the projects. I'm not comfortable with all the funding sources today. That's all.
So we have a motion on the floor and we have a seconder, and all in favor? Opposed? So, motion carries. The motion is, what do we call it? Defeated. The motion is defeated. Thank you. All right. That's it. That's it. Motion to adjourn? Okay, put my hand up for that one. And